Welcome to Politics and Tactics. Clowns to the left of us, jokers on the right, and we're going to start tonight off with the Fool. So we have the president of the Fools, International Fools, on Fire Engineering's Politics and Tactics tonight that has some real exciting news. And also, he works in Alaska. One of the coolest things, he survived the bear attack, and he's here to talk about Fools International. Ben, tell everybody a little bit about yourself and about where you work and about Fools International.
Okay. Well, thanks, Frank. I am the president of Fools International, and it sounds strange that they would choose an Alaskan to do that because I am literally 1,500 miles away from Seattle, and that tells you how far I am removed from the rest of the fire service. But we do actually have flames up here. When the igloos and the electric outlets short out in the springtime, we can get some very short-lived structure fires. In jest. But I came to Alaska back in the 90s. I was looking for a place to put a family together and go to college so I could be more competitive. Because if you'll remember, back in those days, it was all about college. It was all about being a paramedic. And so I was looking to get the best education and work at the same time and provide for my family. And we came to Fairbanks on an opportunity, and we just never left, never felt the need to go back. So then about 2003, 2002, somewhere in there, in the post 9/11 fallout, trying to figure out how to connect with the rest of the fire service, because we felt 9/11 like everybody else, but we felt even more impotent to make a difference about it. And I was at the National Fire Academy attending a course, and I ran into a guy with a Fools shirt on, and it said on the back, Charlotte Metro Fools. And I really admired his attitude and his way of projecting his professionalism and his love for the fire service. And I said, what's this Fools thing about? And I'll never forget his response, because I've copied it many, many times over. And that was, wouldn't you like to know? And it wasn't in a put it off sort of way. It was, why don't you find out? And I immediately understood that if I wanted to know what it was about, I had to invest some time and effort. And as a recruiting tool, it's very effective. Because you get the kind of people you want versus the kind of people that are just looking for a T-shirt that way. And so when I read the mission statement, I just about fell out of my seat, because I thought that's me. That's my heart. That's my spirit. That's everything I want to be as a firefighter. And so I began to pursue it. I came back home, linked up with some like-minded individuals. Some of them had heard about the Fools at the Brotherhood Bash and FDIC already. And we put a chapter together back then in 2003. I ended up on the International E-Board after being president of our chapter for 10 years. I was looking for a break. And about that time, Robbie Fisher, who was already on the E-Board at that time, talked me into applying, using the hook that we could hang out at FDIC together more often, and which has never turned out to be the case because he's such a busy guy. But that's pretty much it in a nutshell. When Ricci was done and stepped down, he turned to me and handed it to me. The founding Fools approved, and I've been running it since 2020.
Now, I was talking to Becky White some time ago, and she said that you guys have a conference coming up. Can you kind of explain a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Our conference is coming up, and I want to pull up the dates real quick so I don't get them wrong. Our conference is coming up in September. All right, I'm sorry, August. And of course, I had this all pulled up so it would be easy to talk about. Yeah, that is true. We're going to St. Paul, Minnesota, and it's being hosted by Northland Fools and Minnesota Malting Fools. And I'm pulling that. It's August 17th through 20th. And so the convention is for Fools only, but this year there's an opportunity for non-fools to also attend and participate in the training. The Northland Fools felt very strongly they wanted to open a door for non-members to see what convention was like, to experience some of the brotherhood that we have there. It's quite a bit like FDC as far as the type of events that take place, but it's usually only about 100 to 150 people at the most, and often wives or significant others come along, and it's a very close-knit group. There's a core group that attends just about every time. I think this will probably be my 15th convention. I missed a few back about just before I came on the international, but it's always the same bunch of folks, and then we add on like more people all the time.
The same folks
and
inside.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's a good analogy when you think about it. They've got some really cool classes lined up. I don't have the latest update in front of me on their class
you can
plans, but Rick George is going to be there.
You can provide us a link, and we'll make sure that we put it up on the show, because the Fools have always supported FDIC. You can always see your members out there, not only teaching, but attending classes and the Fools Bash. So on behalf of Fire Engineering and FDIC, the Fools really go all out for FDIC. So it'd be nice for us to kind of pay that forward and, pretend somebody out there that's listening to the show tonight, my mom's probably listening. Explain to her what the Fools are, just in case somebody's not familiar with you guys.
I'd be happy to. We are primarily a fraternal organization. So the word brotherhood is used, but that is not definitive when it comes to the sisters as well. We are an all-encompassing, non-rank, non-career, non-volunteer. We accept all firefighters as a part of our membership. Cost to join is literally to be a serving firefighter. And individual chapters will have their membership fees. But to be a fool, we personally believe that most firefighters, that especially the 20%ers, are fools in their hearts. We simply organized it and captured it with a framework. That happened in 1995 with what we call the Founding Fools. That was 7 guys that put together the organization. Mike Dugan is one of them. Mike Gilbert, Mike Stallings, who I just had breakfast with this morning. He and his family are up here in Fairbanks and wanted to get in touch. Ken Ireland and my Tom Redmond, and so it was a group of guys that just wanted to be allowed to be proud of being a firefighter, to enjoy having a leather helmet, to really geek out on training, and to really enjoy hanging out with each other and supporting each other and building each other up instead of the teardown that they felt was taking place and the lack of effective training. So over the years, the Fools have, I don't think the Founding Fools ever understood how big this would become. It was literally something they came up with in Mike Gilbert's backyard, sharing a few beers together. And they said, wouldn't it be really cool if there was an organization that focused on just the love of being a firefighter, being a fireman, enjoying what we do. And they created it on a whim, and it just exploded, especially after 9/11. So, our mission statement is to promote training, to promote tradition, history, and also benevolence, to take care of each other in a way that crosses all boundaries, firefighter to firefighter around the country. There's no union involved. It's not management versus the operational line. Any firefighter is a part of our family, and we'll take care of them as best we can. And we promote that throughout our chapters. We encourage our chapters to participate in St. Baldrick's or other fundraising events like Sons of the Flag is another example of one that we've backed very heavily. We also we try to promote the idea that it's easy to be a fool in a bar. It's easy to be a fool and wear a t-shirt and party with everybody. But what kind of a fireman are you in the firehouse? Are you still a fool when it's hard to stand up and be counted, when the situation is difficult, when you come to work and it's a bad day? And the easy thing to do is to fold and go the easy route, which may not be the best thing for your people. Are you going to be a fool at that moment? So there's a lot of mentoring that goes on. We try to capture the young people's hearts. We try to help them understand why our tradition and history is so vitally important. And we try to reach out into every part of the country, in the most rural fire departments to the busiest fire departments. And I would say, having worked in a larger department and then most of my career in a small department, the Fools open doors for firefighters of all size departments to communicate with each other, and more than just the internet. The connections I've made as a Fool, just going to convention. Convention is primarily where it happens. Is you are exposed to some of the people that you've only dreamed of getting to talk to, like yourself, or any number of people you can imagine. And it doesn't have the big show feeling to it. We just sit down, like Mike Gilbert, for example, or Mike Dugan. I met Mike Dugan sitting on a sidewalk after the Fools Bash at a convention, and I could barely breathe because I'm sitting next to Mike Dugan. His pictures on our wall with the flag at 9/11, and he just was thankful to see some guy that traveled all the way from Alaska to hang out with him, and it drops all that pretension about small fire department versus large fire department, career versus paid, and you just share the brotherhood. And it's a life career changing thing to experience. And there are other ways to experience that for sure, especially at FDIC. But we specialize in doing that, and we specialize in doing it with people who are committed to making that dark hallway. As Captain Dugan says, doesn't matter what your race or your color or your gender is. It's the two eyes in the mask. That's what I care about. If you make that hallway, you're my brother, you're my sister. And I've seen it change careers. So I'm a big proponent of it, as you could probably tell.
No, very, very well said. And again, thanks for all you do for fire engineering and for the Fools. We'll send me the link and we'll have Mark put it up. And we really appreciate you coming on Politics and Tactics. And you're welcome to stay on for the rest of the show and hear what our other guests have to say. And we're going to start off with the two cats behind us, and I'll let PJ introduce them.
Thanks, Frank. And thanks, Ben. I want to give a shout out too. So we have a Connecticut member who just received a job at Kodiak Bayside Fire Station. Scott Ellis received the chief job there. So I don't know how far that is from you, but if you have the opportunity to reach out once he gets there, a good Connecticut-born firefighter moving out to your part of the country. So thanks for the information on the food.
All right, will do.
So next up, we have we're moving up to the front row. We got you were good there.
Yeah.
So we got Zac Brown and Dan Coleman. Zac and Dan I've known for a couple years now. They're both lieutenants here in the state of Connecticut, and they have a very unique training program. They saw a weakness in training, or an area that we needed to enhance training, not just here in Connecticut, but also across the country. And it has to do with water rescue. So she's going to introduce the two of them and let them talk about what they found that we were missing as far as training and what they have to offer. So Zac, first up, is a founder of the Water Training Resources. He's credentialed by the International Technical Rescue Swiftwater Rescue Level 3 instructor. He's also a credentialed instructor for the National Safe Boating Council. He was a lieutenant in East Hartford, Connecticut Fire Department. Coming from East Haven Fire Department, I always like to say, we were the real EHFD of the state, but I know there's a lot of argument on that.
I didn't know East Hartford had a fire department until I had it.
Metro Hartford.
Metro Hartford, all right. He's also a member of the Connecticut Task Force, Urban Task Force Search Rescue 1. Now we have Dan. Dan's also credentialed Level 3 Swiftwater instructor. He's an instructor through the International Technical Rescue Association. He's also credentialed for the National Safe Boating Council. He's lieutenant in Southington, Connecticut Fire Department. He's also a member of Connecticut's Urban Search and Rescue Task Force 1. So, guys, welcome to the show. We appreciate you being here. It's kind of fitting that we're overlooking Frank's waterfalls. We start talking about water rescue training.
We're going to have PJ write your obituary because that was pretty good.
Well, thanks for having us on. Appreciate it.
No, we appreciate being here. And, this show, being politics and tactics, we always like to talk about, training as well. And usually it's, training that we're all familiar with. And we're always not overly familiar with water rescue training, right?
And isn't this like the forgotten technical rescue? And ironically, it's the most fun of all of the technical rescue training you could have out there. And it's one of the things that I think is in the most need because any department can suffer from a swift water rescue, even in the Midwest.
Yeah. So, Frank, and that's one of the things that I've learned. I think I learned it from you about, what is actual swift water. I always thought about it's, fast moving bodies of water that you see, out west during flash flooding. But I know you got a great story from the city of New Haven from a historical perspective, where we normally don't think of those issues happening here in Connecticut.
New Haven had a brook, hardly running, but yet with a storm, it swelled, and 2 kids ended up being on a debris pile. And at the time, someone thought it was a great idea to put ladder 5 across and put the ladder down and have the assistant drill master go up and grab them. Assistant drill master, great firefighter, became chief of department. Michael Grant went to go grab him. When he grabbed them, the force of the water flipped the ladder truck, and Mike Grant and the victim went sailing down. And yet most departments don't have swift water rescue training, and it's something that can be done so easily. And these guys have taken it to the next level.
Yep. So we appreciate what you're doing. Love to hear more about what you guys got going on.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Glad to be here. Just a little bit about us. Zac and I formed our company 2 years ago. Yeah. We specialize in swiftwater rescue, but we kind of hit all seasons. So we do fish rescue. We also have a marine division. So we're teaching marine search and rescue, specifically for sonar operations. Connecticut's a really unique state, nice and small, but it's got all the features of a large state. We have whitewater rivers, and then we have Long Island Sound with the marine influence. So we're pretty busy. We try to do a little bit of everything when it comes to water because there's such a need in this state. We really developed all of our programs from the changing climate and the increase of severe weather. And it's just time and time again, these 100-year floods, these 100-year flood plans, it's happening every 3 years. And a couple of years ago in Connecticut, we had a lot of flooding from remnants of a hurricane that came through. And a lot of these brooks and streams that no one really thinks of, they turned into raging rivers. And unfortunately, there was a fatality. Zac and I were involved in the recovery, and that was really the catalyst for us. Like, hey, we have a real need here. It's something we're passionate about, and we want to make a difference and help our people go home at the end of the shift.
This fatality was a police officer, correct?
State trooper.
State trooper, yeah. And you got, retired fire chiefs building, damming water in their backyards, creating waterfalls too, which create other challenges for all of us, right?
Yeah.
So for those of you that obviously can't see our surroundings, Frank has a beautiful yard here that he's created some waterfalls in his stream in his backyard.
Nice white noise.
Swift water training, a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So, but you're absolutely right. For those of you that aren't familiar with Connecticut, we got Long Island Sound, so have a large ocean body on top of all the streams, rivers, ponds, and lakes. So we are very, very unique, and being close to, the White Mountains, that we do get a lot of water in the spring from the spring melt as it heads out to the ocean. So there are a lot of issues here, but, we don't have opportunities just in Connecticut. This is a across the country issue. It's not just here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're reaching as far as we can go. And right now we're in the New England Northeast region, but we know there's a need all over the place. We're not alone here with the severe weather, and not even just talking about the rivers that are consistently swift water in our state. which local risks. But it's more and more, and we're just trying to make a difference here and make training better, make it accessible.
So what's unique about what you guys do?
Yes. So kind of like, well, first off, what Frank said, right? Our job as firefighters, we want to make a difference. So we get a call out for whatever it may be. Our job is, in our nature, is we want to solve that problem, right? And what happens all the time is that everyone goes out the door. What do? We throw our hitches on, right? Instinctively, that's what we always do. Go on a call, throw our hitches on. And we're trying to change the mentality of, hey, like, why are we doing what we're doing as far as our gear selection goes? And so, like, your structural firefighting gear has no need or should not be anywhere near water because it's not going to help you out at all. So that's one thing we're trying to really drive home is like, hey, like, make sure the proper equipment going forward with our training. But what makes us unique, though, I'd say, is there's several things. First off, when it comes to our vehicle rescue program, so we have a program where we put a real car in a real river. We put it in rivers, Connecticut, New York, and Mass next year. We'll be putting it in Vermont. Anyways, the real car, real river. So people, our students, can do real rescues on a real vehicle in the water.
And the EPA loves this.
So funny enough,
Fully approved.
Yeah. So the approval in the state of Connecticut, put it in anybody's water as long as it's on a drinking reservoir. But our whole premise is that we want to set our students up for success. And all too often with technical rescue programs, if you guys are familiar with like the Dunning-Kruger effect, where you come out of a class and you're way up here and your confidence level and your competency is through the roof, but your skill set's actually way down here. And so, not without giving away our secret sauce, every day in training, we kind of knock people back down a level and to keep that appreciation of the dangers and the risk associated with water. But by the fourth day of class, when we do our night scenarios, they're set up for success. So not only are they competent, but also they're confident in the skills that they have honed over those few days.
So swiftwater isn't something you can learn from a book. You got to get in the water.
100%.
You can't learn it from a book or a swimming pool. It's one of those things where, we typically operate in pretty decent size moving water and class 2, 3, 4 rapids as the days go on. And while I understand it's one of those things where, hey, most hurricane flooding, it's not going to be that severe of water. But by exposing them to that in class, they have a good understanding, hey, I've been in this situation before. I know how to handle it. So when it is those raging flood waters or the hurricane waters, they know how to respond appropriately to that.
And so with the car, so all the fluids are drained out of it, correct?
Yeah,
this is a prop.
Yeah, so there's no engine, no transmission, no CV joints. I mean, there's nothing. It's a shell of a car.
But how often do you get a class where I think that's pretty original. I know that some of the flood centers have cars built in, but I've never seen a traveling class where they bring their own car, which I think is pretty impressive.
Yeah, most technician classes, like it's nothing in the standard about vehicle rescue or anything like that, but we identified it as, hey, like more than 50% of drownings in floodwater, people are in their vehicles. So we can talk about it all we want and put it in a PowerPoint and show them pictures, but what are they getting out of that? Absolutely nothing until they actually do it. And so that's really why we want to do what we're doing. Because you're setting people up for failure if we're just showing them slides. And yeah, we can talk about a car in a parking lot, but unless they're in swift moving water, making a rescue from a vehicle, they have nothing to go up. So now they're prepared for when it does happen.
Yeah. And as Dan said, like putting the car in a river is a complete pain in the ass. Excuse my language, but it's hard. I mean, it takes us an hour or two to put it in and an hour or two to get it out. It's a lot of work. But as Dan said, it's all about the students and making sure they're prepared and have that skill set going forward. So when they encounter that situation in real life, they're prepared for it.
And he was talking about fire gear. It's amazing. Everybody thinks fire gear is for everything. Fire gear isn't the best thing to wear at a car accident. Now that we're talking about forever chemicals in our gear, we should be getting away a little bit for wearing it for everything. How many fire engines out there have life jackets on the fire engine ready to go for this flooding situation? Yet we see departments every time you watch the news, firefighters in their gear, turnout gear with no flotation devices. So what's the Connecticut Fire Academy stance on that? Trying to get life jackets on, recommending life jackets on apparatus.
PSA coming soon.
Yeah, PSA is coming soon. Yeah, but being the training arm, that we really don't have any influence on policies as far as that. But you're right, because if you look at pretty much every fire truck in almost every state, right, they have ballistic vests now, right, because that's what appeals to the public opinion, right? They expect us to react and to respond to those types of incidents as we should. And those are a lot fewer incidents than what a swift water rescue is, or it doesn't even have to be swift water. If you're within 10 feet of a bank of water, you should have a PFD on, so I do agree with you that that's something that we should look at. And I like the idea that you brought in the gear and PFAS, right? That's something that, and we spoke about this earlier today on trying to change the culture of the fire service and, not wearing turnout gear when it's not needed. We wear structural firefighting gear, and how many of those calls are actually for structural fires? At the Connecticut Fire Academy, I am no longer issuing structural fire gear to any of my instructors. We're going to be providing them single layer gear that does not have a water barrier that includes forever chemicals to try to begin changing that culture. So there's a lot to talk about here, a lot to package, but I think what you guys are doing is excellent. And, a little disclaimer, as the director of Connecticut Fire Academy, they're doing something here in the state that we currently don't do. So I'm sure, I'll have a few people say, how can you promote a private company that's doing training when you're the director in your state? Well, unfortunately, this is not something that we are currently training to. So I support what they're doing. They have a great class. They're great officers, and they have a good program to deliver, but not just here in Connecticut, but they will travel.
Thank you, PJ.
So for people listening that aren't swiftwater rescue technicians, what are a couple things that you can tell them to kind of take away of why they need this training?
Yeah, I mean, we've been one of the things that's our pet peeve. It's the ice rescue suits, the Mustang suits,
Mustang Ice Commander
that we're so accustomed to using. It's our one size fits all for water rescue, but we've been sold. I don't want to say we've been sold false goods, but we're trying to apply ice rescue techniques to situations that could put us in extreme danger. There's been a lot of incidents just this year of firefighters being washed through openings in floodwaters. We're not talking about in a raging river. We're talking about flooded streets. Catch basins get displaced. They take one step. They're either in a Mustang suit or they're just in turnout gear, and they're getting sucked down through these pipes, and they're losing their life. Maui, Hawaii, they just had one. It was 2 months ago, helping their highway department clear catch basins. They cleared the catch basin. He got sucked through the pipe, dumped into the ocean, and he died 2 days later.
To clear a catch basin.
To clear a catch basin.
Yeah.
Just last week, a police officer in Florida, there's somebody stuck in a car. He went out to them. Fortunately, he didn't know that there's a culvert. Couldn't see it. Water's still flowing. He got sucked through it. Him and the victim, they went 100 feet through the pipe, and they survived. It was all on a body camera. Incredibly scary.
So not only culverts, you got to look in flooding situations where the manholes pop. Because I've seen that in Raven, where the pressure just from in the storm system pops the manhole. You're just walking. Next thing you know, you're in
water's
the
receding. You're going down.
Yeah. So to kind of like sum up what Dan was saying, right? Some takeaways, I guess, would be like, number one, like always wear PFD. Operating like within 10 feet of water, but even so, like get out of the truck and you're out of water call, just pull it on, because instinctively what's going to happen, even if you're more than 10 feet away initially, you're going to get closer throughout the call. It's our nature, right? So that's number one. Obviously, structural firefighting gear has no need or no use at a water call. So think about why are we doing what we're doing as far as what we're wearing and that kind of stuff. The ice commanders, or any ice rescue suit. If you read an owner's manual on gear, if I can say one thing, like read the owner's manuals for all the gear you have, no matter what kind of gear it is. It answers so many questions for you, and it will have a lot of prove a lot of people wrong per se. And what I mean by that is like there's a lot of false information floating around the fire service sometimes. So by opening an owner's manual and reading through it, you can really get a lot of I know it's dry, it kind of sucks reading it, but there's a lot of really good information. And I guess last would be that, I talk about culverts and manhole covers. If you're operating in water, you're better off just wearing your your station attire, the PFD, and probe along. So what I mean by that is grab a roof hook or pike off your truck and just be probing along ahead of you. And that way, you make sure there's no curves. You don't want to roll an ankle. But more importantly, a drainage culvert or a manhole that's displaced, you're not part of the problem. So those things, you take away, kind of keep yourself safe on a water call.
And one thing we see a lot of fire departments want to do is immediately tie somebody off to something that can be that can't be untied. So can you kind of speak to that? If you got the option of just tying somebody off where they can't release, you're probably better off just having them hold on to the loop and not tying into them at all, because that's something you see the fire department do. Oh, we got a water thing. We got to tie you off.
Yep.
And those Mustang suits and those other types of water suits, they don't have a release mechanism. So can you speak to that?
Yeah. So first, the rescue PFD is a Type 5 PFD by the Coast Guard. Needs special use. So for a Swiftwater PFD, it's going to have is that there's a ring on the back which you can hook a carabiner or directly hard tie into, whether it be the rope gets stuck on a log or some debris or a street sign, or something comes downstream and hits that rope and I start going downstream with it. I can pull away my breakaway and now I can swim free of that line. The issue with being tied off now is if that debris or I get entangled in something, now I'm stuck there. Now I'm part of the problem. And so that's one of those things another reason why, Mustang, says in their owner's manual, hey, this is meant for static water only, because that very reason that, it is meant to be tied off, but that's for static water or for, a cold water condition. It's not or an ocean type situation. Right, exactly.
Where you got large open water. And you got to remember that it's not only debris, just the speed of the water can drown you by just holding you in place and keep bobbing you underwater.
I can directly relate to that from my department. 20 years ago, they had a flooding in Quinnipiac River. I mean, it's considered swift water at all times. It's moving more than one knot, but it's a pretty lazy river. But floodwaters come up. They had someone stuck on a tree. They sent a firefighter in with a rope tied around him. He got pulled under, caught in a tree, and he almost drowned. He was able to get himself out, but it was nearly a line of duty death. And we don't talk about it. I don't want to talk about it, but I use it in all of our classes because it's directly, hey, it was almost a death and it could happen again. And it probably will happen again. If we don't know, we don't know.
Yeah, Dan, we don't want to the other thing you see besides tying off is they want to put the rope directly 100% straight across the river or the body of water. Tell everybody why that's a bad idea.
Yeah, I mean, everything in technical rescue, really, we work on 45-degree angles, right? So putting a rope straight across the river is not really giving us any benefit. So we have a ton of techniques to actually use the rope and use the current to our advantage to get ourselves across the river easily without much effort for us and for retrieving a victim. So we can get our rescuers across the river, we can get our victim, and then bring it back across with just 2 throw bags, tension up slightly, and bring it back to shore. So very simple techniques Swiftwater is with minimal equipment. And that's what we try to teach. It's all simple things that can be relatable for all water rescue incidents. And just applying the right techniques to the right situation is the name of the game.
Even more basic than that, right? Departments that are watching today should be taking some sort of proactive stance on education of awareness, right? What is Swiftwater? What is not Swiftwater?
Yeah.
What to do if you have that incident? Because many departments don't have a Swiftwater team. Right. Many departments don't have a Swiftwater training. So what things can they do with what they have, right, available to them? And what, quite frankly, can't they operate it, right? And making sure that their members know their go, no go, right? When they can operate, when they cannot operate. And if they can't, who are they calling, right? How many departments don't have a Swiftwater team, don't know immediately who they're going to call to get those professionals there that are trained appropriately.
Yeah, and that's the issue because we're firemen, police, we are instinctively going to do something. We're not going to stand by idly. So if we can give these departments the tools to do the job from the shoreline, there's a lot we can do with just awareness level personnel before your technicians arrive. If there's a big lead time, we can effect a rescue from shore in many of these cases with just minimal equipment and minimal training.
Which should be the goal.
Exactly.
The goal should be making that rescue, that grab from the shoreline.
Someone is going to go in the water. It's going to happen. Yeah.
And so for chiefs out there, when we recommend getting PFDs for each piece of apparatus, you want to at least have a couple Class 5 vests that have the release on them, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. It takes away that temptation of, okay, we do need to put someone in the water. It's a life or death situation, and we're going to tether them off. At least we have that ability for them to break free. But with specialty equipment, you need to be trained on it.
And we know that departments are strapped for cash out there, especially in Biden's economy that we got going on right now. But the fact of the matter is, if you have a hurricane coming in, you have some other natural event taking place, your emergency manager that you're working with your department may not even realize that you don't have life vests on your piece. So that's another resource that you can reach out to beforehand when you're doing a drill, whether even it's an emergency drill on the airport or something else. Do you realize that we don't have life jackets? We don't have the proper helmets to let that emergency director know, because they just might assume, hey, it's the fire department. They have everything. It's also another way to get another checkbook there to help purchase them.
Well, Frank, you made a good point about, as far as Type 5 PFDs go. And with that, anyone who's listening, if your department's in the market for it, this is not a sales pitch by any means, but I highly recommend getting a high buoyancy PFD. So what I mean by that is, to be Coast Guard compliant, it only has to be about 15.5 pounds of buoyancy. A high buoyancy will have more than 22 pounds of buoyancy. So why is that beneficial? Because now when you go and make that rescue or grab a hold of victim, if I have a regular PFD on, they're going to pull me right under with them. If I have a rescue PFD that's high buoyancy, now it's going to set us up for success as far as having extra buoyancy. Now bring that victim to shore. So they're more expensive, but sometimes it costs a little bit of money to stay safe. But definitely, if you guys are in the market for PFDs, I highly recommend getting a high buoyancy PFD for that very reason.
Another thing I'd encourage you to do is talk to your police department. Right, we kind of forget about the police officers, but 9 out of 10 times they're going to get there before us.
Absolutely.
Right, yeah. And they're the same as us. They're going to act. They're not going to just stand on the shoreline and say, "Sorry, we can't come and help you." So, working with your law enforcement officers to educate them on what they can do to set that incident up for success, which doesn't mean they should be entering the water, which we know they are going to enter the water, but maybe provide them some awareness training on what they should do, what they shouldn't do. And like I always told the police officers and law enforcement in the town I worked in, I know you're going to enter that building when you get there at 2 o'clock in the morning before us. I know you're going to do it. But if you're going to do that, I tell you shouldn't. But if you do, this is how you should do it, to try to offer them a little education, how to keep them a little bit safer. And this is the same thing. You know they're going to enter that body of water. So we don't want you to enter, but if you are, this is how you should go about doing it. These are some of the things that you should consider.
You make a great point, PJ, is that so every year about 7 public safety personnel die in water-related incidents, right? And most of those are, as PJ mentioned, they're going to be police officers because they get their first on scene. They have a lot more gear on them. They're not always taking off their duty belts and that kind of stuff. So working with your local police department, if you're bringing outside training or bringing training, definitely include them, or getting PFDs, include them on that kind of stuff. In reality here, we have the same mission at hand, right? We want to save people's lives and help people out. So that's one of those things we're definitely, and if you're a great point, PJ, get them included, get them involved, because they want to be safe as well.
Without a doubt. And get out there, get the right equipment, and get the right training. And again, swiftwater rescue training is it's just fun.
Oh, it's a good time.
And you learn a lot. And the other thing about swiftwater training is the skills that you learn for swiftwater can be applied to confined space, can be applied to all of your other technical rescue disciplines. It just kind of all backs each other up with your systems, your rope systems, things of that nature. And, I remember having an open water emergency in New Haven with a kayaker flipped over, where immediately made sure everybody was in vest, deployed my personnel upstream to report any debris coming down. That also works for train accidents. But somebody up tracks about a half mile to a mile to report a train coming. Everything is interdependent. Yeah. And then they were too far out, so I couldn't reach, throw, row, go, or helo. So I stole a boat and from the marina, commandeered the boat, figured that would be the end of my career, and got to the kayak, and it turned out it just got blown off the dock by the wind, and nobody was there. But
still got to check. Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing with all this training is it's humbling, and it makes you respect the water. We do not go into a situation, any river, we know these rivers really well. We don't go in cocky, confident, because the water is in charge. Yeah. And it's not a controlled environment, and it makes people respect the water, us included. You just cannot be comfortable. You have to be not hesitant. You have to be controlled and calculated and make the right decisions to keep us safe and have an effective rescue.
Well, look out for both of these individuals. Hopefully they're going to write an article about their car prop. I mean, taking a car and putting it in the river, that's environmental friendly.
It is. Yeah.
It's just, that's innovation. That makes the more realistic we can make training, the safer it's going to be for firefighters. And, we got the Fools on. They got their conference. It's all about quality training, getting quality training, and making training a little bit fun. Training shouldn't be punitive. Why don't we introduce Paul, and get Paul in this conversation, because Paul is somebody who makes learning about pumps interesting, because he asked me if I wanted to go to his class, and I said no, for that reason. But I will say this, the reason I had him come on the show today is one of my New Haven firefighters came up and said, well, that class was really good. And I go, really? And he's like, it was about pumps at FDIC. So talk about a hard place to teach pumps, because the pump operator really is the unsung hero of the fire service. I mean, it's like the redheaded stepchild. I mean, they get nothing but beat on. So PJ, if you could introduce Paul.
Yeah, so Paul Watlington. See, I knew it. I had it right the first time. So I won't even try now. But Paul's the chief of training for the city of Burlington Fire Department in North Carolina. He's a 22-year veteran of the fire service. He has associate's degree in fire protection, bachelor's degree in emergency management. He's an FDIC presenter and a fire engineering author. And he's all about training, right, Paul? So, and that's a good story. I didn't know pump training could actually be fun. So I'm interested to hear what you got to offer tonight.
Hey, I love Paul. He's got my book on the desk. So that is proof that more than my mother has bought that book. So, Paul, I appreciate it. Welcome.
It's not a Xerox copy, okay? It's the actual book.
What book is that? Tell us about real quick. What book, Frank?
Command Presence, the best-selling leadership book at FDIC by 2 copies. Beat out Frank Bacuso. Check it out on fireengineering.com, and Mark will put up a link. I promise if you don't learn anything, it'll entertain you.
Yeah, and the only reason I got Paul's last name wrong is because he only has Frank's book there, not mine. So I won't pronounce his name right.
Actually, I do have yours and Sean's book. A buddy of mine is borrowing it right now. So,
good one. Yeah,
hurting your sales.
I'll believe you.
Sales.
Yeah, I'll believe you. It's okay. No,
Frank, I want 10%. Okay.
So, Paul, welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me on the show, and very nice to meet everybody. And Zac and Dan, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I need to get your information from Frank. I'd like to possibly look at getting you guys up here to Burlington in North Carolina to do some stuff.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
We've had a couple of situations to where we could have used a next level of training in that field, so that'll be good. So it's easy, right, Frank? Everything 68, 150, 320, 375, right? It's easy. Frank picks on me about that all the time because I did figure out, I guess, a nifty way of making pump operations great again. All right. So I guess it kind of started back when I was coming up through the ranks. I had a very progressive company officer, and I initially started looking at the pump operator as more of a stepping stone to get to an officer rank. Really, nobody really gets into the fire service, saying, hey, I want to be a firefighter because, I want to be a captain. No, everybody wants to be a firefighter. And then when they get there, they realize, there are other steps and progressions that you could make in career development opportunities and progressive steps that you can make up through the ranks in your department. I got to the pump operator role knowing that, I'm going to sit here for a year, and then I'm going to move into a lieutenant's rank. And I actually fell in love with it. I embraced that challenge of being at the pump panel and just understanding the overall knowledge of the position. But something was a little different with my company officer. He wanted me to know more than what was given in a certification. He wanted me to know the job. He wanted me to know what's on the other side of the panel. He wanted me to know the limitations of my rig and, positioning apparatus, things that you just don't learn in a certification school. And I'll get back to that here in just a second. But, he really wanted me to know the ins and outs. And one of the biggest reasons was, when you're a pump operator, you're standing at that pump panel alone. You don't have anybody else there to bounce ideas off of, right? So you are the troubleshooter. You are the one that has to figure things out. I just looked at the balance of training opportunities for all ranks, in the fire service, and we just weren't doing enough for pump operators. Contrary to many people's belief, there are actually a lot of people that come into the fire service, and when they get to the pump operator role, they find it as a destination position. So for those individuals, what are we doing for them? We give them a IFSTA or Jones and Bartlett pump operator manual, and we give them a test and then tell them to go figure it out and maybe do some, pump operations in the back parking lot of the fire station. Well, that's not enough.
And I think you're right. The driver makes or breaks the officer.
you said the unsung hero. I'll follow that up by saying exactly what you just said as far as the pump operator making or breaking a company officer. But the pump operator can make or break an incident, right? And cause huge delays in operation when not only, it may not be something that they do, but it's maybe because they can't figure something out that they should be able to figure out. I've had one particular situation that I discuss a lot was, fortunately we didn't have any victims involved, but one incident, it was a residential fire. And when I pulled up, I ended up not having to pull the line for the firefighter and the captain. They pulled it. They called for water. I went to charge the line, pulled the lever. I knew I had a positive water supply. Pump was in gear. They had nothing. So that particular incident caused me to go back. I ended up having to pull a second line off of the truck for them to use. I had a stripped out ball valve in a ball valve housing. Well, that's not a problem that you're going to fix on the fire ground, but you need to know that so you can know when plan A is not working, don't stick to it too long. Go to plan B. They have to have water.
Now, you could always rely on the truck company, because I learned in New Haven that if you just keep putting the ladders up on the building, the fire will eventually go out.
Oh, it will. Yeah. That's exactly right. Yeah. If you pull more Halligans off of the truck, force more doors, and put more ladders up, the fire will go out.
It's just like in the EMS world, all bleeding stops.
Exactly.
So, Paul, I got a couple questions for you regarding pump training, right? And I'll hit you with both these, and you can discuss them. So, as a training officer, when the pressure governors came back, right? A lot of training officers felt that they truly can't educate new members on how to pump because it's just pushing buttons and presets, right? Just push that button and walk away.
Preset volley, right? Yeah.
Yeah, right. We're so challenging of educating new pump operators. But then the big issue with training pump operators is emergency actions, right? We can't train our pump operators in all of the emergency actions. We could talk about it and we could explain, well, if this happens, you can do this, but we can't actually put them through some of those scenarios because we're going to blow up pumps.
Do they make a training pump?
We can get into that. Yeah, they do. Actually, the city of Connecticut's purchasing a pump simulator for that. But that's a big task. It's a big ask. It's a big money piece for a lot of departments. So if you don't have a pump simulator, how do you recommend training with new pressure governors? And what are some of your tips and tricks to train new drivers for those emergency actions?
So going to the beginning, there are learning curves now for all the technology that is out now, and not only the pressure governors, but now the SAM systems are out. It's all a fully automated touchscreen pump panel, right? It does have manual overrides, but that's what I have seen is the obstacle is the individuals in your departments, your company officers, who are the real training officers, a lot of times in your departments. They're having to learn this too, right? Your training officers are having to learn this information. This is not something that has been a tradition in the fire service and passed down through training and on-scene knowledge. And again, going back to my previous statement about certification stuff, we have to get outside of the box. There's so many different learning opportunities based on best practice. You go to FDIC and it's a week-long conference with a lifetime of knowledge. So many things that you can learn that are beyond certification, tricks to the trade. But none of that's out there for the pump operator role, right? So what pump operators and training officers and some company officers are having to do is go outside of their departments to these technology to take advantage of some of these technology opportunities, and even calling some of the manufacturers like from Hale or Waterous to their departments to do training on pressure governors, the SAM systems. Going to your second part, obviously we all know that cavitation is not really something that we want to recreate on the drill ground. And then, you'll be in the chief's office trying to figure out how to help buy a new pump. But there are other things that we can do to kind of create the adversities that pump operators may have to or may be exposed to on scenes. One thing I like to do is we set up drills like company drills. I want to evaluate my pump operator too, right? They never get evaluated. So maybe I throw in some adversities. Maybe I unscrew a 2.5-inch cap off of the hydrant. They pull up. We use large diameter hose here in Burlington. So, we spot a hydrant, we spot a prime hydrant. We come up 5-inch hose on the steamer, but they have an open 2.5-inch cap on the hydrant. You got to make a quick decision. What do I do? Go to the truck, find something that has a 2.5-inch connection that you can turn off, put a nozzle on it, a gate valve, something, just little things like that. And also most of our pre-connects are 200-foot pre-connects here in Burlington. So when a pump operator is pumping a particular line, we'll tell them, hey, the end section just burst, but 150 foot of work, because people get so caught up on predetermined pump pressures that, and it kind of goes to the presets. I absolutely hate presets because it takes away the concept of thinking and understanding that things are not always perfect. It's not always a 200-foot line. It's not always a 7/8-inch tip with 160 gallons a minute. It's taking away the concept of thinking is it's really letting the truck do your job for you. But the truck's going to do what you tell it to do, right or wrong. You have to understand that. And I'm sorry, but we don't get to pick and choose what parts of the fire service that we're professional and precise at. I mean, nobody else does. I mean, I make a lot of people mad when I say what I'm about to say, but if you're that person that don't really care too much about what your pump pressure is, then you're the same type of person that's not going to search that corner when you're doing a primary. And I mean, that's just the fact. It's all in or all out. And I guess to conclude that particular conversation, we're not doing enough for pump operators, and I want to do my part for offering tricks to the trade, best practices, and street level training for pump operators.
I can definitely add to that. A lot of new pump operators in my job. As a company officer, like you said, you got to evaluate them. I love when we're going down the street, going to the grocery store or whatever. Hey, take this block and let's go take the hydrant. We're going to stretch a line off, make water. Just so happened the other day, I had a new driver working on overtime, come around the corner, and lo and behold, there's a construction meter box on the hydrant. So it's like, hey, go grab that hydrant. We're stretching a line. And he's never seen one of these before. Had to problem solve. The hydrant's on. I'm down one discharge on it. What do I have to do? You got to shut it off. You got to dress it. You only got one side. So those little things, those adversities in training, that's just going to make them more prepared when something doesn't go according to plan. Doesn't go according to plan, like the hydrant in the station parking lot that you use every single time when you check the truck. It's not going to be like that when there's an actual fire. So,
and you're right, and it kind of ties into what you guys are doing too, because I mean that pump operator, your mindset is here, and then the company officer his thought process is here, he or she, and then the firefighter's thought process is there. I guess I look at things a little bit different. The company officer should not have to tell the engineer, chauffeur, pump operator where to position a truck or how to position a truck. And we talk about time to victims. Anybody that's been to a search class prides themselves, and we all pride ourselves on trying to figure out new ways and quicker ways and more efficient ways to get to victims. That pump operator plays a part in that too. When it comes to positioning, knowing routes, knowing streets, understanding road closures, that's your role in time to victims. So a lot of people don't look at it that way too. So I guess, Frank, that's one way that, I am trying to make this interesting for people that need to hear it.
So what PJ was saying earlier, so is there value in getting some kind of pump simulator that can simulate some of the things that you can't do on a real pump?
I'm an acoustic before the electric kind of guy when it comes to, I like learning the old school methods. I like the manual pump. I like the manual throttle pump, learning that first and then progressing to a pressure governor or a SAM system. So when it comes to training, I'm kind of still old school, and I like the actual pump panel in my hands to where I could see the law of reaction, and see things happening that I'm making happen. It just depends on, I guess, the realism of that particular simulator. If you can, there's most of the adversities that you may be faced with, you can create those with a manual or with an actual fire apparatus. But The pump simulators have proven to, I've actually operated one at FDIC this year. They called me over when they found out I was teaching the pumps class, and they said, "Hey, would you come over and do some stuff?" And it's pretty cool. And I did, get a few things out of that. So yeah, I do think that they're beneficial.
There's different types of simulators. There's VR simulators, which is just in theory, and there's actually pump panels. So the one that we have here coming in Connecticut is an actual pump panel that's computerized, that all the levers and valves actually work, right? And you can create those emergency actions, and you can create, if we want to look at the testing side, you can create consistency, right? And you can have data outputs of how that individual is done, and you can do this training. It doesn't take place of real training, right? This is to augment that training, but you can do this in the firehouse all day long, right? So you can go in and you don't have to put thousands of feet of hose out in the street. You could do it in the middle of February in the winter when, here in Connecticut, we can't really do pump training in February, right? We could go into the firehouses in the winter and perform this training and keep those skills fresh, keep them consistent, and do them all year long. Right, where it doesn't make up for the training of putting the hose out in the street and stretching hose lines, but there are good systems out there that you can do that with.
And training all the time is so critical. A perfect example, Ron DeMattis, who was my driver when I was an engine officer, he positioned at a medical the same way he positioned at a fire, past the building. And if there was a tree, I think just instinctively, or a telephone pole, he would know to give a little bit more at that medical. It was like muscle memory. And when you hit the fire block, Ronnie, I would never have to look over and say, "Hey, Ron, slow down," while I'm trying to figure out what side of the street is. He would instinctively know where he was going before I even got in the piece, know what the best route was, and then instinctively he would slow down when he hit the fire block so you could get a really good look. Those are all things that are beyond the math, but really help set the stage for a good fire operation. Slowing when you hit the block, positioning like you're always positioning at a fire, and don't just get sucked into that thing of, I just need to get past the fire building. When you're going up slow, is there a tree there that's going to affect the swing wires? So you got to give them an extra 5 or 10 feet. You can stretch hose, you can't stretch a ladder. Paul, you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. And one of the things you were talking about, the detailed little things, and some of that comes into pre-planning too. I mean, the engineer or chauffeur's role in pre-planning is very important. Understanding FDC locations and knowing, during the day in your apartment complexes, what is my stretch going to look like? What is my supply or lead in going to look like to the FDC? Leaving room for that. And you're talking about positioning, showing your engine boss, 3 sides of the house before he even gets out of the building, or before he even gets out of the apparatus. But those little things are important, and that's what I'm talking about when I say extending past certification material. We don't talk about stuff like that in certification material. And those are the little things that, like you said earlier, make or break a company officer and really help maximize the efficiency and capabilities of the crew.
And one of the things I was always taught is you have to create muscle memory within your pump training, right? And how do you do that, right? My first driver who taught me how to pump, everywhere we went, put the truck in pump, put the engine in pump. He didn't care if we were going to fuel, or we would go out and drive to learn the streets, and he would make me stop at random spots and put the truck in pump, right? Mm-hmm. So when that time comes, when you roll up at that first instant, you have fire blowing out from all sorts of places, and you have people yelling in the street, you could pay attention to all that stuff, and you could still get the engine in the pump because it was muscle memory, right? So little things like that have created muscle memory as a driver, paying attention to the details. So when something goes wrong, you could fix it. When somebody's banging on the window because there's an entrapment, right? You can listen to what they're telling you on the victim's location, and you can still get that engine to pump the right way every time.
Because where does the person always come to? The driver's side, not the officer's side.
Yeah. That was important.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, we are at the witching hour here. Mr. President of the International...
You digitized there for a minute. What did you ask me?
We're just going to give you the ability to say the last word of the night to our listeners, and just remind them about your upcoming conference, and then we'll go to Paul for his last word.
Well, thanks. I really enjoyed the conversation. I was a swiftwater instructor for a number of years, so I was really in tune with that conversation. And I haven't heard someone talk about the jump from basic pumps to electric pumps in a long time. So I was jumping at that, wanting to add my 2 cents, and I had to remember I need to stay quiet. But we pump all year round, 20 below. We get out there and we do it. The Fools Convention is coming up at the end of August. Right now, I just looked and the registration page is having a glitch for some reason. So anybody that wants to check out our convention, go to our website, foolsinternational.com. There's a link there on the homepage that'll take you to the convention Facebook page and the registration page as soon as it's back up. I've already got people working on that. So thank you for your time. And anybody that would like to know about the Fools, it's all there on Facebook and Instagram and on our website. We're easy to get a hold of. We're very friendly people, and we believe first and foremost in taking care of our firefighters, tradition and history, and perpetuating training that matters. So look us up.
Very well said, Mr. President. Honor having you on the show, and be safe in God's country up there in Alaska. Paul, kind of give us your synopsis on pump training. And I think you made this clear. It's important, right?
Yeah, it is important. And if you take anything away, just take away understanding that the roles and responsibilities of that pump operator and where they fit into the crew, where they fit into the entire aspect of response, right? And take that back to your departments and, evaluate your programs. Look at what you are currently doing and look at where your room for improvement, where are your gaps in your training programs. Do your pump operators have their healthy dose of attention in your training programs like everybody else or like all the other positions, right? And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention FDIC, fire engineering. Hey, if you got something that you could bring to the table, something that you think that's weighing on you that you could put in writing, write for the magazine, write an article. Plenty of great editors there to help you out. And as far as FDIC, if you find yourself in FDIC in April, hopefully if I get accepted once again this year to teach, come see me in my class. If I don't get accepted, you'll still see me there. Because I'm a student of the service just like everybody else. I want to get better and learn and be around all of my like-minded brothers and sisters, right?
Paul, do you have a website or anything if somebody wants to contact you and ask you a question?
I don't have a website. I'll be happy to provide my email address. My mobile number is all over the internet. My email address is too, but I'll be happy to provide it. It's pwatlington@burlingtonnc.gov, and that's pwatlington, WATLINGTON @burlingtonnc.gov. And my phone number is, like I said, 336-504-5078. It's all over the internet. So, it's not like I'm hiding anything, right?
Yeah, don't tell your wife that.
Yeah, okay. But anyway, hers is too, so it doesn't matter. But anyway, come to FDIC. Like I said, I mentioned earlier, it's a week-long conference, but it's a lifetime of knowledge. Take advantage of that. Get your departments to send you up to Indiana, and if you do, I'll see you there. And I want to thank everybody again for your input on the show, and thank you for having me. And very nice to meet everybody.
Paul, it's an honor to have you. You're a great instructor. I've learned a lot from you just having conversations at FDIC, in the hallway, and at the bookstore. Dan, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, just we're all over social media, Water Training Resources. You want to send us an email, it's training@watertrainingresources.com. That's it. Just respect the water, wear PFD, and just seek out qualified, experienced training.
PJ?
So I got the last thing. Something that came up a little bit nugget that was kind of buried in the water rescue stuff is knowing your PPE. Frank, it's something that we've talked about. I challenge you to ask any law enforcement officer what their ballistic vest will protect them from. And then ask any firefighter what their turnout gear will protect them from. Most firefighters don't know how long our gear protects us from. during a flashover. Because what happens? We get new gear and we're all excited because we don't get new stuff, right? So we take it out of the bag, we wash it, and we throw it on, right? So when you want to really talk about training, really dive into the details. Know what your gear actually protects you from and doesn't protect you from. Know what you can do in your gear and what you can't do in your gear. When you should wear certain types of gear and when you, quite frankly, shouldn't wear that type of gear. So I challenge you to, be better than our law enforcement brothers and sisters and know what your gear can protect you from and what it can't protect you from, right?
That's it for Politics and Tactics today. We thank Mark Hoff for producing our show and Fire Engineering and Editor-in-Chief Dave Rhodes. Hope to see you at FDIC. Hope that some of you will make it out to the Fools. And thanks, Paul, and thanks, Dan and Zach, for coming out today. We'll provide links at the bottom of the show. That's it for us. Mark, can you take us off?